Herself, now grown a young man, came briskly in, accompanied by his fellow apprentice. "Dick Wilkins, to be sure," said the Scrooge to the ghost. "Bless me, yes, there he is. He is very much attached to him. Dear, dear." "Yo-ho, my boy," said Fezziwig. "No more work tonight. Christmas Eve. Christmas, Ebenezer." "Let's have the shutters up," cried old Fezziwig with a sharp clap of his hands, "before a man can say, 'Jack Robinson.'" You wouldn't believe how those two fellows went at it. They charged into the street with the shutters. 1, 2, 3, had 'em up in their place. 4, 5, 6, barred 'em and pinned 'em. 7, 8, 9, and came back before you could have got to 12, panting like racehorses. And just a little note on this description of Fezziwig. So it describes him as sitting at a desk, and then it says he's laughing from his shoes to his organ of benevolence. Now, you might think, and you'd be making a pretty good guess, that your organ of benevolence might be your heart, but it's actually your forehead. Because in the 19th century, and especially in the early part of the 19th century, people were really into this idea of phrenology, and phrenology is wacky. I mean, I don't have another description for it. It's really wacky, but it comes up in a lot of books. And basically, phrenology is the study of the measurements of the skull, which people thought would give you insights into somebody's psychology and somebody's kind of their personality. So they mapped out all these different parts of the skull, and depending on the dimensions of it, it's supposed to tell you all sorts of stuff about a person. But in this phrenological mapping, your organ of benevolence was part of your forehead. So when it says from his shoes to his organ of benevolence, it's actually sweeping up the body. So I just find that interesting. "Hilly-ho," said Fezziwig, skipping down from his high desk with wonderful agility. "Clear away, my lads, and let's have lots of room here. Hilly-ho! Cheer up, Ebenezer." Clear away? There was nothing they wouldn't have cleared away, or couldn't have cleared away with old Fezziwig looking on. It was done in a minute. Every movable was packed off, as if it were dismissed from public life forevermore. The floor was swept and watered. The lamps were trimmed, fuel was heaped upon the fire, and the warehouse was as snug and warm and dry and bright a ballroom as you would desire to see upon a winter's night. In came a fiddler with a music book, and went up to the lofty desk and made an orchestra of it, and tuned like 50 stomach aches. In came Mrs. Fezziwig, one vast substantial smile. In came the 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In came the 6 young followers whose hearts they broke. In came all the young men and women employed in the business. In came the housemaid with her cousin, the baker. In came the cook with her brother's particular friend, the milkman. In came the boy from over the way, who was suspected of not having board enough from his master, trying to hide himself behind the girl for the next door but one, who was proved to have her ears pulled by her mistress. So Fezziwig is basically throwing a neighborhood party, but mostly for the young people that worked up and down in his neighborhood. These are all kind of sad stories. If you know the term room and board, well, board, that's the food part. So when it says that somebody doesn't have enough board, it means that at their job they're not getting enough to eat. And a lot of these are jobs where people live, so it's not like you would go home and eat at your house. And of course there's the girl who's being physically abused by her employer. She's getting her ears pulled. In they all came, one after another, some shyly, some boldly, some gracefully, some awkwardly, some pushing, some pulling. In they all came anyhow and everyhow. Away they all went, 20 couples at once, hands half round and back again the other way, down the middle and up again, round and round in various stages of affectionate grouping. Old top couple always turning up at the wrong place, new top couple starting off again as soon as they got there, all top couples at last, and not a bottom one to help them. So picture in your mind, this is not couples dancing. This is not a waltz. This is more like a reel. And one of the hints that we have is, first of all, how crazy and fun and disorganized it seems, but also the fact that there's a bottom couple. So, this is big group dancing. When this result was brought about, Old Fezziwig, clapping his hands to stop the dance, cried out, "Well done!" And the fiddler plunged his hot face into a pot of porter, especially provided for that purpose. But scorning rest upon his reappearance, he instantly began again, though there were no dancers yet, as if the other fiddler had been carried home exhausted on a shutter, and he were a brand new man resolved to beat him out of sight or perish. There were more dances, and there were forfeits, and more dances, and there was cake, and there was negus, and there was a great piece of cold roast, and there was a great piece of cold boiled, and there were mince pies, and plenty of beer. But the great effect of the evening came after the roast and boiled, when the fiddler, an artful dog, mind, the sort of man who knew his business better than you or I could have told him, struck up Sir Roger de Coverley. Then old Fezziwig stood out to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig. Top couple too, with a good stiff piece of work cut out for them. 2 or 3 and 4 and 20 of partners, people who were not to be trifled with, people who would dance and had no notion of walking. But if there had been twice as many, 4 times, old Fezziwig would have been a match for them, and so with Mrs. Fezziwig. As to her, she was worthy to be his partner in every sense of the term. If that's not high praise, tell me higher, and I'll use it. A positive light appeared to issue from Fezziwig's calves. They shone like moons. They shone in every part of the dance like moons. You couldn't have predicted at any given time what would become of them next. And when old Fezziwig and Mrs. Fezziwig had gone all through the dance, advance and retire, both hands to your partner, bow and curtsy, corkscrew, thread the needle, and back again to your place, Fezziwig cut so deftly that he appeared to wink with his legs and came upon his feet again without a stagger. Okay, this is obviously the best description of anybody dancing that has ever been written anywhere, because it's just endlessly hilarious. First of all, this song, Sir Roger de Coverley, is a real song. I'm going to try and play it here. See if I'm able to pull that off. I heard it last summer on the street in England, and I just about died. But anyway, so it says the name of the song, Sir Roger de Coverley. Second of all, it's already been established, old Fezziwig and Mrs. Fezziwig, they're not small people. Like, they're large people. It keeps making these references to how tall he is, how capacious his waistcoat is. And old Fezziwig would be wearing, on his calves would be white because of the stockings that he's wearing. When it says that his calves shone like moons, this is like a great big guy with great big calves, and the calves on his legs are shining like moons on the dance floor. That's hilarious. And then the other thing that is really funny, just to picture in your head, when it says that he cut and then his legs appear to wink, if you've ever heard, this is an old-fashioned phrase, but if you've ever heard the term to cut a rug, so it's a dance move. Just like these other, and also, side note, all of these dance moves are awesome, and I wish I knew how to do them. Corkscrew, thread the needle, it all sounds awesome. But anyway, to cut, you jump in the air, and then you move your legs like as many times as you can before you land again. So here's old Fezziwig, and he's this great big gigantic, old guy jumping in the air, and that's why he appeared, when it says it appeared to wink with his legs. That's what he's doing. Okay. When the clock struck 11, this domestic ball broke up. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations, one on either side of the door, shaking hands with every person individually as he or she went out, wished him or her a Merry Christmas. When everybody had retired but the 2 apprentices, they did the same to them, and thus the cheerful voices died away, and the lads were left to their beds, which were a counter in the back shop. During the whole of this time, Scrooge had acted like a man out of his wits. His heart and soul were in the scene, and with his former self, he corroborated everything, remembered everything, enjoyed everything, and underwent the strangest agitation. It was not until now, when the bright faces of his former self and Dick were turned from them, that he remembered the ghost, and became conscious that it was looking full upon him, while the light upon its head burnt very clear. "A small matter," said the ghost, "to make these silly folk so full of gratitude. Small, echoed Scrooge. The spirit signed to him to listen to the two apprentices, who were pouring out their hearts in praise of Fezziwig, and when he had done so, said, "Why, is it not? He spent but a few pounds of your mortal money. 3 or 4, perhaps. Is it so much that he deserves this praise?" "Well, it isn't that," said Scrooge, heated by the remark, and speaking unconsciously like his former, not his latter self. "It isn't that, spirit. He has the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toil. Say that his power lies in words and looks, in things so slight and insignificant that it is impossible to add and count them up. What then? The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it cost a fortune." He felt the spirit's glance and stopped. "What's the matter?" asked the ghost. "Nothing particular," said Scrooge. "Something, I think," the ghost insisted. "No," said Scrooge, "no. I should like to be able to say a word or two at my clerk just now. That's all." So, pausing just a little second. First of all, that's beautiful. I think out of this entire book, that one passage has influenced me the most as an individual, because I'm a classroom teacher, and when I first read that, it just made me cringe, because I realized, geez, it's not, in my case, I don't pay employees, I don't manage people, but I manage little humans, and you have a lot of control over their lives and their moods, and the way that Fezziwig gives to people around him, it's all in just the kindness that he exudes. But that line that Scrooge says, his power lies in words and looks, it's just so true. The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it costs a fortune. This is directly opposite of what he said earlier. The other thing I want to point out is that, Dickens makes a special point of talking about how the light from the top of the head of the ghost is shining especially brightly. And so since we know that it's an allegorical figure for memory, really what he's saying is that the light of memory is shining very clear. It means that Scrooge is remembering, in a lot of detail. Okay. His former self turned down the lamp as he gave utterance to the wish, and Scrooge and the ghost stood side by side in the open air. "My time grows short," observed the spirit. "Quick." This was not addressed to Scrooge or to anyone he could see, but it produced an immediate effect. For again Scrooge saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of life. All right, we are going to end off there and meditate on how we're using our powers for good or ill to make other people's days happy or miserable. I will see you guys next time.